Should we do any sort of introduction? You want to say like, "Hi, my name is Grandma"?
Okay, my name is Grandma, otherwise known as Dean de Loma Ogle Mollenhauer. My mother's imagination. Everyone asks me that here.
Yeah.
What does your name mean? I don't know. Well, I can tell you my favorite game, and it was just my younger brother and myself.
Yeah. What age were you?
I was probably 7 or 8, and he was 5 or 6,
Okay.
2 years younger. We always played Salute the Queen.
Salute the Queen.
Salute the Queen.
And what is the premise of Salute the Queen?
I would be on the throne of a corn plower or something on the farm. That was my throne. And he was my slave. And if he didn't do what I required, why, then I was, being the older, I was the one that instigated a lot of the games. But I played cars with him, and he played dolls with me, so it worked out okay. But this one day, he was not doing as I requested, so I was going to hang him, okay? Fortunately, I tied the rope around his middle.
This is good.
I threw the rope over the rafters in the barn and started pulling. There he was, his little old leg just a dangling. And that was a fond memory. It's a memory I remember. At that time, I only had one. When I was 14, my parents divorced, and my mom remarried and married a man with 3 children. The oldest was a boy, same age as myself, still alive. We correspond, and 2 stepsisters. And they all moved in together in my mom's house because my mom had a beauty shop in her home. And so then, instead of a few, we became many.
What
Became
is
5.
many?
Well, we
5 total.
had five children.
Wow.
And my real brother is gone, of course, but my step brother and 2 stepsisters are still living, albeit they're old like me.
Where do they live?
In Illinois.
In Illinois.
Illinois. But we still have phone chats and letters. And,
where were you living when this occurred, when you lived with them?
In Missouri.
In Missouri.
In Missouri.
Yeah. So you've lived in quite a few places.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
quite a few places. I've lived in a lot of places. I think I went to 11 different schools in my lifetime.
Wow.
Well, by the time they came into the family, I'm 14, because I left home at 15.
Really?
My mom, I literally got squeezed out of the nest.
Really?
Because there was them, but I went to Kansas City with a girlfriend and started to work. I was fortunate that I had taken typing and shorthand in high school, so I was able to get a job as steno. But during the World War II, it was easy to get a job, but because I was not quite 16, I could not work the 9 hours that everyone else did. So
16, you worked 9 hours.
so I had to leave after my 8 hours was done. And that always embarrassed me, to have to be the too young to work 9 hours and get that overtime. But so because I did that, I wasn't with my siblings that much. My brother went to college. My stepbrother went into the Navy, and my two sisters, of course, were with my stepdad and mom. So I really didn't have a lot of time together with them at that particular time. Well, I don't remember. I was never really close to my dad. He was always there, and he was a good man, but I was not close to him. Mom and I were, of course, very close. And I don't remember what their squabbles were that drove them apart, except I think they were both young. At least my mom was very young when she married, because I think I was born when she was 19. So I think they were just went apart. They just grew apart as they got older. So I've never blamed either one of them. Mom and I remained close. Well, my mother was just a housewife. My dad was in Missouri. He was a tenant farmer. He worked for $1 a day because he had his home provided, and we always had a big garden. So the money he did make went for clothing, stuff like that.
Yeah.
$1 a day. Well, my mom taught me so many things, and it's hard to say what's most important. A lot of things she didn't teach me.
Yeah.
A lot of things my mother-in-law taught me, because when I came into the family, my mom was 2,000 miles away, and Bob's mother was there to teach me a lot of things. How to cook. Mom did not teach me how to cook. My mom was mean on clean, and for me to go in the kitchen and mess up things and try to cook, it was easier for her to do it. She always said she would rather have me studying and being a good student than having to learn to cook. So the first year of our marriage was pure hell in trying to cook, because I didn't know how.
Yeah.
In fact, Marilee had said before, she'd said, no one's ever going to marry you because you don't know how to cook. One week I was supposed to cook, next week she was supposed to cook. Well, my week, it was pretty short stuff. So, but we survived on my cooking the first year, and Bob gave me a big, for our first paper anniversary, gave me a good housekeeping cookbook, and I took off from that. Oh, they're just nice grandparents. My grandfather, I remember my grandfather with 6 kids, 4 girls and 2 boys. I remember he always says he would not do any babysitting. I don't know how Grandma felt about it, but he said, I raised mine, you raise yours. In other words, no babysitting.
Yeah.
He was very strong on that. I had so many. They were all favorites. They were all good. But I had my Aunt Tressie on my maternal side. She was fun-loving, a jokester, lots of fun. I think that's where Darrell got some of his teasing, because Aunt Tressie was a big tease. The one time she, back in Missouri on the farm, they always left the back end of the outhouse open, and so the chickens could get in and clear it out.
Huh.
So this one day, my grandmother and my great aunt were going to the outhouse, and they had no sooner gotten sit down when my Aunt Tressie, my aunt, took a dipper of water, and she went out and gave it a sling up from the back of the toilet. My aunt jumped up and she said, Lily was my grandma, Lily, that some old hen just wet all over me. That was my Aunt Tressie, always a jokester. Probably go see one of the relatives.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember we did. No, there weren't movies until we got older. No, it was mostly things that you did at holiday times with the family. You went to the relatives. I had a lot of relatives. I had a lot of aunts and uncles on both my mom's side and my dad's side. My dad was one of 7. He was 5 boys and 2 girls.
Wow.
And my mom was one of 4 girls and 2 boys. For many years, when my dad was a tenant farmer, we were close enough that we could see each other often. Well, probably would be Marilee, because her parents had been divorced, and her mother had remarried, so there was that common ground between us. And she now is the same age as I am. She is in assisted living in St. Louis, so we're in close touch, same age. Oh, my dolls, of course.
Dolls, yeah.
But as I said, I played with little cars with my little brother.
Right.
Oh, I suppose it was Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Christmas.
All kids like Christmas.
Christmas. And of course, in the Midwest, it was often a white Christmas.
Yeah.
And I remember one Christmas, I was probably 6 or 7, and trying to stay awake and listen for Santa Claus to come. And I heard the sleigh bells. The sleigh bells. I looked out the window, and it was a beautiful moonlight night, and snow everywhere. It stopped snowing, but moonlight on the snow. And I remember that scene. And of course, it had just been my dad with the sleigh bells from the horse. He was doing it outside the window.
Yeah.
I didn't. But it woke me up enough so that I got that beautiful scene.
Right.
My first pet, oh my, on the farm we always had a dog or a cat, but I don't remember my first pet. Bob was never allowed to have a dog because they didn't have a fenced-in yard, and his folks didn't want a dog. So on his 50th birthday, we got him a toy poodle. And so the two of them went to obedience class. Taffy got an A. Bob got a zilch. He could not remember just to say the commands.
Yeah.
It was not heel or stay. Taffy, will you please stay? Whole lot of talk.
Right.
And instead of the one command. But he loved that dog. He lasted for 12 years.
All right.
And then it died, and then we got another toy poodle, Cinnamon. So he had 2 toy poodles for his years, but by that time we were too old to get another dog.
When did you start getting the cats?
Cat?
Yeah.
Well, the cats we have were feral cats that Gary kind of coaxed them into being tamed. Yeah, we had a lady down on the corner from us, and she collected unwanted cats that are abandoned cats or feral cats or whatever. She had about 10 cats, and we adopted a couple of her cats, and that's what Gary takes care of now. Well, I think mainly I just wanted to marry a curly-haired man and have curly-haired children.
That was the ultimate goal. Just
My ambition,
be the wife and mother of the curly-haired.
my ambitions were very high.
You made it happen.
No, I don't think I had any subjects. Yes, I enjoyed literature, English, and Glee Club.
Yeah.
Not math, certainly not math. No algebra. Never to go back.
Never to go back.
Go back to mid-20s, but not as a teenager.
Yeah.
It was
I agree with that. It's a crazy
well,
time.
it was a growing up time for me because I was out on my own, very early age.
Yeah.
Not many kids today would be equipped to go out at 15.
Vast
to work.
majority are not capable. No.
Because for one thing, the educational department situation is different.
It is.
You're just not qualified now. The same one I drove for 30 years.
Yeah.
It was a 77 Chrysler Cordoba. And I almost cried when we got rid of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I worked in a hamburger place once and had to chop up onions and cried. Decided I didn't want to do that for a living. I worked in a department store for a short time in lingerie. I decided I didn't want to do that for a living. So, but the still was fine. But
What do you think was your favorite job out of all your jobs?
well, my favorite one I worked for when we were in Illinois. My folks went to Illinois, left the farm, and went to Illinois to get into defense plant work during the war. So then when I got homesick in Kansas City, I went up there and joined them and lived there with them for a time. And I worked at the newspaper office then, and that was my best job. I enjoyed that. I didn't work. I just worked in National Classified in the ad department, doing steno work. I'd say probably that one, because that's when I was working at the Dispatch, the paper. That's when I started writing to my husband. Well, we corresponded for 2 full years before we met. And at the newspaper office, I was working with Pauline, a cousin of Bob's, and she asked me one day if I would write to Bob. I mean, he's the only child, poor old thing. He's down in the Caribbean, away from his mom and dad. So I said, well, if he writes first, sure. And so he did, he wrote, and so it started our writing. We wrote for 2 years until he was discharged.
Yeah. So the question was, what do you remember about when you fell in love with Grandpa?
Oh. Well, it's hard to say when it began. I probably fell in love as soon as I saw he had curly hair.
Yeah, that's it, huh? All right.
Because I had a real fetish since I was 12 years old, and I was going to marry a curly-haired man,
Yeah.
curly-haired children,
Okay.
even grandchildren.
Yeah, you definitely got that.
Not quite so long, but
right.
but no, I probably would have.
So he came,
It's
he
hard to
was-
say when it really happened. It's all very gradual. When he was discharged, he had hoped to come to see me. By that time, I was back in Kansas City. I'd gone back to Kansas City with my friend, and but he couldn't. He was discharged late in the year, and he was afraid coming from the tropics and coming to Missouri in November. It would be just a little bit too much. He was afraid of a storm. So anyhow, it was not until 1946 that he came back in August of '46, and I met him for the first time. And he met my folks. We drove to Illinois. He met my folks, and then we drove straight through. No motels, no nothing. Straight through. We did stop at my Aunt Tressie's in Colorado at that time, and stopped overnight. The rest of the time we drove straight through to his home in Alhambra, and I stayed there I was there for 3 weeks. He wanted me to show me California.
All right.
So we did. We went to. He wanted me to see Yosemite that he and his folks had camped in, so we went there camping with Mother Mollenhauer along as chaperone.
Yeah.
And of course Bob proposed to me there.
Yeah. I know Yosemite you have a very strong connection to.
Very
Would you
strong,
talk about
yeah.
that at all? Is it mostly connected to Grandpa?
Oh
Yosemite,
yeah.
When he
yeah,
showed you
yeah,
some
yeah.
Is it? I vaguely remember my dad saying that it was kind of a regular spot for you guys. That you had been
Well,
multiple
after
times. That you would,
after
like,
that it
go
was.
go
It was a
hiking
special
and
spot for him, and because he had done so much camping with his folks there.
Oh, okay.
But of course, camping was a new experience to me,
Yeah.
as well as hiking. I never hiked in the mountains. So I have always said he took me there. I had to be camping and hiking material, or he never would have proposed.
Yeah.
I guess I passed the grade.
All right. Okay. And the proposal was just another trip to Yosemite, and
No,
He just happened
no,
to-
it was at that initial trip. We didn't go back. He was. We were all three in sleeping bags, and he proposed to me. He in one sleeping bag, sleeping bag.
all right.
It was in Kansas City.
Kansas Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
And who was the matron of honor, or the best man?
That was Mary Lee, this friend that I went to Kansas City with originally. Right. She was my matron of honor, and I was her maid of honor 2 years before.
Okay. And what about the best man?
The best man was Bob's cousin.
Bob's cousin.
He came out for the wedding. My children?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, they fought a lot. Daryl would be reading. Marthita would come along and tweak his ear, make him mad. And then the fight would start in. I never questioned whose fault it was. I would probably just swat them both or punish both of them. So.
Do you have any interesting stories?
Yes, there was Marthita and Daryl. Seemed like every time we get to the dinner table, they would start kicking each other, unbeknownst, you know. And so one time I'd had it. It seemed like every meal they had to be tormenting, teasing each other. So finally, after I'd heard he's kicking me, she's kicking me, I took them away from the table. I set them in chairs opposite to each other. I put the timer on for 10 minutes. I said, now you kick, and don't you stop kicking until that timer goes off. Tears rolled down the face. It's hard to have to kick at something when you don't want to.
It's not fun anymore.
Not fun. 10 minutes is all eternity.
It is. It is.
Oh, to reach their fullest potential and be happy. What else?
That's pretty good.
What else is there? Well, we had company.
Okay.
We had people from Missouri, a man and his wife, and the man's mother. They were visiting us, and I was ready to deliver any time. I remember I fixed spaghetti that night for them, and afterwards we went to Griffith Park. We went up to the observatory and took them up there to see that. And then in the middle of the night, the water broke and we were off to the hospital. I told Mary, that's the man's mother, she was sleeping on the sofa. We were in just a small apartment, just happened to have a rollaway cot in our bed. And I told her we were leaving for the hospital. And that was the last I saw of them then for many years, because they were not allowed to come to the hospital to see my firstborn, which is a pretty special event. And because it was only allowed to, mothers were allowed. And since my mother was not here, Bob's mother was able to come visit me, but no one else. And of course, that's all changed now because the whole family can be there now, I guess, if they choose. But that's what happened. I remember it because they didn't get to see my firstborn that I was so proud of, and I didn't get to see them again for several years till we went back to Missouri. So I've told you about the kicking.
Kicking, yep.
I know he had a friend come over. Of course, I've always been a napper, and I remember that he and his friend were outside really whooping it up. It must have been Cowboy and Indian Day, and he was really whooping it up. And I went to the door and I yelled at him, and he was probably, I was 6 or 7. He had outgrown his nap, and I yelled at him. I says, "You may not need your nap anymore, but I still do," and told him to be quiet. So he was a good boy. He was good. He did a lot of reading. In fact, I saw him one morning when he was just a little guy. He was putting on his shorts, getting dressed, and trying to read at the same time. The book on the sofa on the bed, and he was trying to read because he was a reader. And Bob and I would both read to both the kids. We read to the kids a lot. Well, when he when he started working, I don't know whether he had a summer job. I don't know whether it was his full-time job, but anyhow, when he started working and making money, I told him he would have to pay room and board. I was going to charge him, I think it was $75 a month. Well, that made him mad. Well, if I'm going to have to pay money to stay here, I'll move into the fraternity house. And I said, okay. That's when he was in college, of course. I said, okay. So he did. And of course, it's the best thing that ever happened to him because he was a little bit reticent, a little bit shy. And getting there with people, he bloomed. Yeah. And it was good for him. Of course, when Marthita and Gary saw that, when they of course, Daryl had to learn there that he still had to pay a certain amount for the food. He had to put in a certain amount, so it probably came out to the same amount. But Marthita and Gary both, when they started working, they both paid. And of course, as we would have done for Daryl, we put the money aside in a special account. And then when Marthita was married or sometime, and when Gary would graduate or something, and we had that money to give to them that they had paid room and board. And Daryl missed out on that because he
he didn't
wasn't about to pay $75, whatever it was. But
no return on his investment.
It was really good for him because I think he really, I don't know, he just grew up within. First time I met your mom, well, I don't really remember the first time. I know when they were first married, she used to come by after work, and she was trying to adjust to being married, and she needed some pep talks of how to survive. And so we would have some nice conversations then. I don't know whether any of it helped, but anyhow, they're still together. Well, I would like to have gone back to Ireland and Norway and New Zealand. Those 3 places appealed to me most of all. I saw more than I thought I would ever see with Bob. I'm very grateful for it. When it got so we couldn't go international, we started doing the tours in this country.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I don't know that I have any favorite song.
A favorite musician, singer?
Well, right now it's probably Jim Reeves.
Yeah.
He's a Western singer.
Okay.
He was killed in the airplane when he was 35, and I listened to him quite a bit on my stereo.
Yeah.
Well, now I practice deism, but I've come from being a Baptist, a Presbyterian, a Quaker, and now a deist. And does it help me? Does it help me? Yes, it helps me a great deal. Deism is a liberating. You're removed from the tangles, the webs of, and rituals of organized religions. So it satisfies me. I wouldn't try to sway anyone into it, because I think you have to be ready for any religion, whether it's a convert to Jewish or Catholicism. You have to be ready for that particular religion. But mine is deism. Oh gosh, it's hard.
Yeah.
Well, the ones that affected my life has been Emerson, of course, and Thomas Paine, and Wayne Dyer,
Do you have any specific
and,
book, though?
and Ayn Rand.
But what about specific books from those people?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Specific books, like Emerson. If you were to recommend, I mean, you recommended authors.
Yeah, that's
So
what.
how about books?
Old books of those.
The specific books.
Oh. Well.
If you had to pick one Emerson book, which one would
Emerson, Self-Reliance.
it be? Yeah, there you go. Me too. Yep.
You knew that.
Number one, always, of course, of course.
Self-Reliance, and Joe McDonnell is The Age of Mythology, the Art of Mythology. That would be Joe McDonnell's. Wayne Dyer, I don't know, Wayne Dyer is probably the one I sent you, where he's elaborates on the
His perspective of the Tao.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Ayn Rand.
Atlas.
And Ayn Rand she called herself the radical capitalist.
Yeah. No, you gave me the selfishness one.
The Art of Selfishness.
The Art of Selfishness.
Yeah, I like that.
That was a good one. Most definitely.
That's good. Yeah, it's very good. We think we're being so noble when we give to people, when we shouldn't give to people.
Yeah.
Let them work for it.
Yeah.
Let them earn it.
Yeah.
And it's going on now more and more, and it's killing our country. It's killing our people.
Well, yeah, it's,
They're not self-reliant. They're not
this is very true.
Take a nap.
Take a nap. This is a good way to do it.
No, I think a lot of it's just. And Bob was a great one to be able to handle stress. So I've learned a lot from him. But don't sweat the small stuff. It'll be gone tomorrow. What makes you happy? A very mundane day that I don't have any commitments. No doctor appointments.
Yeah.
No having to get out and go, because it becomes more of an effort
Yeah.
to move around.
So happiness is effortlessness.
That's it.
There you go.
I like that.
That sounds good.
Yeah, you know, it's gotten so when I'm sitting like this, I'm 50 years old.
Right?
As soon as I stand up, I'm 92. So now when people ask me, how old are you, Von Dean? I say, sitting or standing?
Yeah.
It's a different age.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that I got all these while we skipped around. There's
Well, that's,
always a possibility I missed something, but I can't imagine that we didn't
I
get
think you know enough.
a ton.
I think you
We
know
actually
enough.
went through way more than I thought we would. So we can just do any kind of conclusion. Do you want to send a message to your family? Say a loving greeting, or you want to sign off with something?
To all my children, you have made this life worthwhile,
All right.
very worthwhile. I'm sorry you all had to have curly hair and hated it. But I've liked it. That's okay. This has been fun doing it with Rob. I learned a lot from him. He probably has learned too much from me.
Yeah. I don't know if that's possible.
Anyhow, I love all of you kids. You're very special, very special. Stay close together. Don't drift apart.